as a cyber leader, there will be times when you have to go to them and ask them for something that just, it flat out does not support something that's important to them. It just doesn't. It happens from time to time. The problem that I see for most cyber leaders is every time they approach business leaders, they're just approaching it with this thing that they're making their case that you need. So they feel like every time it's like, oh, here comes cyber.
And the call center.
Gang.
Welcome to the CSM Lounge. It is a part of the Cybersec Migrant podcast. I'm your host, Femi. Today, we're going to be looking at something different, a different kind of journey. Journey from being a high-level technical expert to becoming a transformative business leader. Joining us is someone who has spent over 28 years helping technology leaders with change. She's an executive coach to CISOs. She's coached more than 300 leaders at companies like Airbnb, Sunny, and LinkedIn, which all of us use in the professional world today. She founded the Selby Group in 1997 because she saw that, quote, the old school high control leadership model was beginning to crack. Today, we're diving into how to navigate the stress of leadership, particularly in cybersecurity, and how you can turbocharge your own personal transformation. Jump in. If you're finding value in these conversations, please hit subscribe, leave a like. Share this episode with someone who is also looking to level up their career. Guest today is Jennifer Selby Long. Jennifer, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Femi. I'm thrilled to be here.
A lot of years of experience. That's a lot of years of experience. So the good thing about being very experienced is that you've seen things ebb and flow. Times have changed. You've probably seen different approaches to leadership. You know, there's the leadership, and someone who comes from a country like Nigeria, the African continent, leadership is very, very restrictive. So the leaders want to actually their fingers in every single pie. In North America, because I've also worked in North America as well, it's more, okay, I'm going to let you do your own thing because you're good at that, but these are the metrics I want. This is my result. Yeah. Why do you think that you find that today most companies are beginning to move into the hands-off thing, let the people do the thing, and the leader is sort of as controlling as they used to be? So why do you think high control approach to elicit the best performance doesn't really mesh with a global workforce? What would you say?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great question. And, there are a couple of different things that I think are at play here. First and foremost, continuous downsizings, pushing for efficiency. Plenty of people who have high control needs go into leadership. We kind of see it. There's actually a test that measures your need for control. And what's pretty interesting is you go higher in organizations, those scores go up. So people who are higher in organizations typically have higher control needs overall. It's not just a higher need to control outcomes themselves. It's also a higher need for the people above them to have control. Interesting, isn't it? They're just more control oriented. But, we all know that can also manifest in what Shermeen calls the saboteur neural network of the controller, which is the negative manifestation of that. So even if you're super, super control oriented, by the time you go through enough layoffs across time, you start to realize, like, even though you might want to control a lot more and have your fingers in all the pies, guess what? There aren't enough hours in the day. And so to some extent, external forces push people with a high need to control to a breaking point where they have to realize it's time to break down or break through, right? What got you here won't get you there. A lot of times those high control needs in a more junior level person do get them promoted because their boss notices, for example, that they're super conscientious, that they take personal responsibility for ensuring that the work is delivered to the high standard. So not surprisingly, those are folks who often get promoted. They earn the respect. And so there is a point, though, where you just can't. And sort of related to that, it might feel a little off topic, but given that so many of your listeners are listening in because of their own career interest and career growth, I will say that I think that there are two times in a person's leadership career that are the most sort of shocking and unsettling changes. The first one is when you get promoted from what we would call an individual contributor, someone with no reports, no team under them, to that first time manager or supervisor. Because what
Yeah.
happened
Yeah.
is you just completely changed careers, but nobody told you. They just told you got promoted.
Yep. True. I know how it works.
You
Been
know
there
the
before.
feeling, right? You get
Yeah.
into that
Yeah.
first role and you suddenly realize, my gosh, I spend almost none of my day doing the things that I'm competent at anymore. I am, in fact,
Exactly.
dependent on these other people who
Yep.
maybe aren't as competent as I was, and I am dependent on them. I can't do it all myself. I can't make up
Yeah.
for it if they
Yeah.
screw it up,
Yep.
right? There's
Yep.
only one of me and there's 5, 6, 7 of them. And so that first job is a real shock, that first time when you go into management. And the other one that I think is really big is when you get to the top, when someone goes from, say, the titles are different industries, director to VP or VP to C something is a
Okay.
big shock, because at that level, you almost are guaranteed to have a wide span of control. That means you have to lead people, and a lot of them, who do something that you will
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
understand because it wasn't part of your career growth. And that takes a
True.
huge leap of faith, and it
Yeah.
requires you to let go of that need to control, because there ain't no way. If you have, I don't know, platform engineering and you never did platform engineering, guess what? You don't get it. You're never going to get it. You're not going
True.
to get it
True.
the way the person right below you gets it, because they came up through that. And so these are some of the various things. There's a third element, which I also think is, again, it's not about the individual and their growth. It's just the environment and the circumstance. And it's that the workplace requires more collaboration than it
Yeah.
did when I think a lot of those people who still like that command and control, they came up during an era that maybe didn't require quite as much collaboration. You didn't have as much
Yeah.
access to super efficient technologies. And
True.
so you
True.
had a lot of people executing who you could kind of treat them the way you treat an agent today. Stay in your
Yeah.
lane, follow these exact instructions, do this exact thing, and they didn't need to talk to anybody else. And there was this, small layer of people who handled the handoffs, but largely you didn't have as much need for collaboration. Across time, I started to see it certainly in the 90s, and it was a little earlier for some industries, a little later for others. I just started to see this thing crack because people had to collaborate. So they were
Yeah.
essentially,
Yeah.
if their boss was trying to control them, but their boss didn't know the work as well as they did, which would be expected, they were sort of collaborating behind their boss's back, which is nuts, right? As a boss, you really want to encourage that collaboration, not try to control everything in silos. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's the other thing that I think has happened across time. There's more and more need for collaboration. I have no crystal ball. AI is enormous and in some ways unknowable and changing at a huge rate.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
say that ability to discern, to collaborate, those skills that are not that linear swim in your lane technical skill are the ones that will remain for the people who remain after the agents start doing a lot of the execution.
Completely agree. And collaboration is so important. I think it's one of those soft skills that aren't really taught in
Oh
school
yeah.
these days. And you have to learn the hard way, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, if you will.
Right.
But you also mentioned something that, again, everyone is talking about it today, and that's AI. AI is
Oh,
everywhere. It's global. It's
yeah.
used by the good guys. The bad guys are leveraging that. I spoke recently about how AI is now frontier AI, where what would take 5, 6 months to find an exploit today, now AI is finding those exploits in hours, right? And
Yeah.
so all these sophisticated threat actors have unsettled every sort of business. And what used to work before doesn't work anymore. So
Yeah.
what do you think is on the mind of most leaders today? Especially, like you said, they have this need to control. But now
Yes.
here's AI blowing everything wide open. What are they
Yes.
thinking about right now? And then
Yeah.
what should they be thinking about? Are they thinking about the right things or the focus misplaced?
Yeah.
In your experience, what do you see? What do you find with your clients?
So, what I'm seeing, in the same way that AI is this huge, diverse, complex thing, I'm seeing a tremendous diversity of reaction to and focus when it comes to AI. So, I look at, like a client who's not a CISO, he's an enterprise architect. He's already thinking as far out into the future as he can. What's top of mind for him is around educating other leaders in the
Mm, mm,
company,
mm.
around ensuring access to this more forward thinking toward influencing those in the company so that they make, the best possible choices. I don't think there's such a thing as good
Yeah.
choices and bad choices when it comes to AI. We're only going to know after the fact which of those were good and bad. Wise
Yeah.
choices, informed choices
Yeah.
as best as possible. He's focused also very much. Now, he has very, very low needs for control. He came out of an entrepreneurial background, super independent thinking. So he's also focused on, how can he help them give up some need for control,
Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
is a necessary part of it. I see, it's funny. I just had lunch with a CISO client just last week in New York, and he is super focused. He's focused on a lot of things around AI, as you can imagine. But in particular, we talked about his focus on users and the how, the risk is still the employee who accidentally or
Yeah.
occasionally intentionally becomes a bad actor, right? And so
Yep. Yep.
so he's super focused on that. And that conversation led to one of my most favorite topics, because I work with nearly 100% of my clients on this at their request, because it emerges as necessary. It's the importance of how you build those business relationships as a CISO or as a
Yeah.
VP in any technical space, but particularly cyber, how you build those relationships such that you can prevent some of those human factors from being such a big issue. And why do you
Yeah.
need to develop that at that C level, that VP level? It's because people follow the lead of the person above them and follows the lead of the person above
True.
them.
True.
And so, in cyber, you could do your cybersecurity awareness month, which I do think is vital, and I don't want it to ever end. But, you can do all kinds of things from cyber to encourage users. But if you really want users to do the right thing, their bosses have to be on
Yeah.
board with
Yep.
you.
Yep.
They
Yep.
have to be on board. That has to be a shared responsibility. So he has worked very hard for the last several years now to build those relationships. And I said, so, what a lot of people find, when he wanted governance on this, he wanted this to be shared responsibility, not just like he dictates it. And so I said, a lot of
Yeah.
times, my clients find that when they try to set up governance, the person who you do not want on the governance team, because they're way wrong for it, is going, me, I'm on it. I talked to my boss. I'm going to represent my boss. And you're
Yep.
like, thought bubble over
Hard
your
to
head
say
is
no.
never in a million years. And how did
Yeah.
this happen? Right. And so I said, how did that go for you? And he said, I asked the right people and they all showed up for the meeting. And I went, that's a testimony to the effort you put into nurturing relationships. A lot
Yeah.
of cyber leaders get promoted out of technical strength, and then they come to resent the relationships. They come say, oh, it's so political. I'm like, hey, there's people. And maybe it used to be in the past. I was there. I could see if there was a problem pertaining to cyber, it was seen by business leaders as a technical problem. So you threw technical people at it, right? And so today, though, one of my clients has pointed out very eloquently, you're not the only technical expert in the room. When you're doing an audit committee meeting as a CISO, you better believe those super smart people have educated
Yep.
themselves
Yep.
quite well. And you're not going to be educating them on any of the basics, and they'll be pretty well informed, and they're going to have their own opinions. And so that ability to nurture those relationships, to have those conversations with people, to support them across time, it's quite significant in terms of that return on investment. You can't just think, I'm the cyber expert as the CISO, the top of the pack, and therefore they will listen to me because of my expertise. Why else would they have put me in the role? Well, they probably put you in the role because they had reasonable confidence that whatever came along, you could figure it out, but not that you would be trying to figure things out on their behalf, that they should be figuring out with you.
Exactly.
And that's a big,
Exactly.
big difference for someone who's been rewarded for that technical skill and finesse for so long that, they do tend, initially in our engagement, I am usually there because they recognize, hey, I underestimated those human factors, that business influence, right? I underestimated that. I thought that bringing the best people together to work for me. They would be a great team, and they're not. They're still
Mm.
great individuals, but I can see they're not working well as a team. I can see that we're not actually getting people on board with change and with transformation that we need
Yeah.
to make happen in the business. And so, wow, it turns out that this soft stuff is a lot harder than it looked. And so that's
Yeah.
why I'm in there,
Yeah.
just to help them move forward on that and to cross that finish line and to be able to be
Yeah.
really, really strong in those areas.
Maybe they shouldn't be called soft skills anymore because they really aren't very soft to learn. They're quite difficult to learn. I agree. Completely agree. Skills, no,
Tough
no.
skills. Yeah, very tough. Very
Yes.
tough. Very tough. Every soft skill recognizes that we are all inherently subjective. And that is such
True.
a
True. Yeah.
painful awareness for someone who prides
Yeah.
themselves on their objectivity. Now, we are all
Yeah.
also fundamentally subjective as well. Leadership is
It's a human
so
thing.
much about, yes, humans are complex, right?
Yeah.
Leadership is
Yeah.
about managing polarities. It really is.
True.
So,
True. True.
managing the
True.
reality that we're all both subjective and objective. We all are.
Yeah.
Every decision has a subjective and objective element.
Yes, and it's going to be
No
different
two
every
ways
time a
around it.
different person makes that decision. Yeah.
Yes.
10 people you can
Yes.
give 10 people the same problem and you would have 10 completely different outcomes. And that's just the subjectivity of it.
Completely.
But I want to stay on that
Completely.
thought for a minute. I want to stay on
Mhm.
that thought for a minute.
Sure.
It's easy. It's easy for somebody who is, you're up there, you're the leader, to influence the decisions or what happens for those who are, for want of a better word, below you in the chain. So I'm the
Yes.
CISO, I'm the VP, I'm the C-suite executive. I need to get up my managers and the team leads and supervisors to do what I want.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like you said, it has to work the other way around. So the CISO has to let the board, the C-suite know that, okay, we do this thing, this particular because of certain reason. For people who, like we started out talking about, people who like to have control, it could be a challenge,
Yeah.
getting, because it's like, I'm making decisions, I control the purse, I'm on the board, who you tell me what to do. How hard do you think it is for people at that level to actually change? And what are the strategies that
Mhm.
anyone who is actually looking to influence leadership can actually use to get them to your side?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, if they're not on your side, it probably doesn't fly.
So true. So true. Power of the purse, right? Follow the money, and that's where the power is. So, yes, absolutely. So, probably the biggest, most consistent gap that I see in people trying to influence those powerful people is they're coming at it from their goal versus the powerful
Mm,
person's goal. And they don't even know the powerful person's goal because they haven't bothered to ask. Now, why haven't they
true,
bothered to
true,
ask? I don't know. I guess everybody's a little bit intimidated by power. But you
true,
need to
true.
find out what is most important to that thing, to that person. What thing is most important to that person? What are their goals? What are their headaches? What is worrying them and keeping them up at night? If what you want doesn't help them with that, they're probably going to say no, if you can even get their attention, right? So you have to
Mm,
figure out how what you do can help them with what's important to them. Because none of us really, especially, want to spend time on things that we don't
true,
perceive as
true,
important. We feel
true.
like that's a
Yeah,
waste of
yeah.
time. So you know,
Happens to me all the time.
yeah,
We have to do
it
it
happens
anyway.
all the time. Right. And so it is really kind of the biggest challenge, I think, to come to understand a person's business. Now, remember too,
Yeah.
most senior executives are what we would call pretty work identified, which is to say they're going to feel like if you haven't taken the time to get to know their business, the business they lead, that they feel so strongly about, that consumes so much of their energy and time, they're going to feel like you don't really know them. You don't know my business, you don't know me.
Yeah.
They're not
Yeah.
people who are
Yeah.
generally as interested in you knowing them personally as a way of trusting you. The trust is
Yeah.
going to come more from you put the effort into understanding their business. And a CISO client of mine he just asked if he could start attending quarterly ops reviews. And to most technical people, they go, oh, gag, why would I want to attend a quarterly business ops review? Because it's a really good way to come to understand what's going on in that business unit or that
Business. Yeah.
business
Yeah.
function, because
Yeah.
that's their quarterly their goals, their pain points, where they're struggling. Attend 3 of those in a row, and you'll start to notice, wow, the dashboard is red on this same thing again and again and again. I bet that is really frustrating for those leaders, because those leaders are accountable for the results. They're not the ones who do it. I have a senior executive now required who has this joke, I'm an executive. I don't do anything. And
But
it's a
he's
way of saying
responsible.
I am right. I am fully responsible. 100%. In fact, he was
Yeah.
a CFO, so he could go to jail if you did it wrong, right? Literally in the US, the CFO can go to jail. And his boss used to joke, I don't look good in orange jumpsuits. It's not a great fashion look for me. So make sure you do this right. Yep.
Yep.
So,
Don't blame him.
orange doesn't flatter me either, frankly. So I think I want to stay out of orange jumpsuits too. So, it's really, it's the single biggest gap. And I think that this is the thing that separates the best from the rest. The people who make the effort, despite the fact that their confidence zone, not just comfort zone, but confidence zone is technology, cyber risk, assessments, that whole space, that they take the effort, despite the fact that they're now probably 20 years into their career, to say, okay, I need to stretch into a whole new space, which is really deeply understanding these businesses that are right in front of me, not broadly, generically, something you can read about, but literally getting in there and understanding what is going on in these businesses and what they're focused on and what matters to them and what their pain points are and what their stressors are. As a cyber leader, there will be times when you have to go to them and ask them for something that it flat out does not support something that's important to them. It just doesn't. It happens from time to time. The problem that I see for most cyber leaders is every time they approach business leaders, they're just approaching it with this thing that they're making their case that you need, and they've not bothered to find out how it could support them. So they feel like every time it's like, oh, God, here comes cyber.
A cost center.
Gang, right? I'm under so much margin pressure. They have no idea how much margin pressure I'm under because nobody ever asked. And now they're going to come to me and they're going to go, we need some money. And it's like,
a new tool. We need to spend $5 million on a new tool, a new dashboard.
We need $5 million, and it's like, what? So that's what I mean by like really truly coming to understand their business. And imagine as you get to know their business, what's it like if I'm them, putting yourself completely in that leader's mind, and not just their shoes, but their whole heart and head, and thinking, here comes cyber. What does cyber need to be asking me, communicating with me in order for me to even consider getting on board with freeing up these funds for them? And so that is huge. That's an enormous stretch. It's an enormous stretch. And to me, it's a very exciting stretch because, what I believe is that all of the best and most exciting growth in life happens in midlife, as long as you choose it.
I agree.
As long as you choose it. Midlife is where you're standing at a precipice and you're deciding, keep growing, which means really recognizing that what got you here will not get you any further in any part of life, right? That's a choice. You can choose to just stay right there and stick with what got you here. But the catch being, of course, the world keeps changing around you. And so it might not work anymore. And the other choice is to keep growing, really lean into that growth and develop those parts of yourself and of your knowledge that you thought you would never want to or be interested in. There's such extraordinary growth, and it's early days for neuroscience on this, but we are seeing some early indications when, you hook people up to the scanners and all the wires come out of their heads and you track what's going on. Again, early days, because you have to get people who are in different life stages, and ideally you want to track them from 20 to 40 to 60. You can't do all that yet because they didn't have things they could stick on your head that long ago. But early days, it definitely indicating that in midlife, there are neural networks that you can fire up more easily than you could fire them up when you were young. Now, I'm sure everybody's going, which neural networks are those? And the answer is, it depends. It depends because it's not the same for everybody. It's the neural networks you didn't fire up when you were younger.
Younger.
Right. The ones you
Exactly.
fired up when you were
Exactly.
younger are nicely developed now. At this point, they've had a lot of experience, they've had a lot of practice. Literally, if you do a brain scan, they're thick. They're literally thicker, like a muscle that's been worked out. But the ones
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
thinner, now is the time when your brain has some
Yeah.
energy to
Yeah.
invest in some of those. And
Yeah.
you'll be shocked if you're 10, 20, 30 years into your career at the things that you can learn, how you can grow. It can be
Yeah. Yeah.
so remarkable, so
Oh,
remarkable.
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that. And as you were
Yeah.
speaking, I could hear the coach in you, I could hear Coach Jennifer speaking and, talking to those CISOs and those C-level executives about those soft skills they need to develop, and I can understand, I totally can relate to that. But
Uh,
I'm also
yeah,
thinking, because again, you did mention, neural networks and all of those things.
yeah,
And I know that there's a lot, especially as a leader, there's a lot of mental pressure that they feel. People think it's all about, it's all about the bottom line. It's all about, we've got to do this technical thing, that technical way. Like you said, they aren't really thinking about that. Most of the pressures they feel is mental. So what advice would you give to, anyone who's thinking of becoming a
yeah,
leader, doesn't realize that there's a lot of mental stress you're going to go through when you become a leader?
yeah,
Advice
yeah,
would you have for
yeah,
them to say, as a coach, with your experience saying, the
yeah.
things you don't see, don't get blindsided by this. Prepare for this.
Yes, yes, yes. It's a great question because mental command is, I think, the most vital. Now, I know it's the most vital foundational skill that any leader can
Yeah.
develop, and that is command
Yeah.
over your own mind. And so, one of the things to recognize immediately is that pain happens. Painful things will
Yeah.
happen to
Yeah.
you, but continuing to suffer is a choice. And so the suffering happens in the mind. So when you feel a negative emotion, again, in this regard, I'm also quoting Shirzad Shamin, it's like your hand is on a hot stove. Don't keep it on the hot stove. Recognize that you're feeling a negative emotion and act to cut that tape, right? Cut that tape
Yeah.
in your head.
Yeah.
And there are many ways to do this. Some of the best ways are tactile, whether it's a deep breathing exercise, looking at going out in nature and just really looking at and appreciating a leaf or a bird or something. These
Touch
are
some
things that
grass.
touch some grass. That's a great one. Just, you want to break that cycle, right? And get out of that negative mindset because it's only in the movies where a leader, something happens to someone and then they get really angry. And in that moment, they make an incredibly fantastic decision. In real life, we usually make really bad decisions when we're really angry. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
recognizing that you have some anger welling up, recognize that, 99% of that time, that anger is not about the situation or the other person or even about your
Yeah.
own defects. That's something that is called the saboteur neural network, and it's firing up because the brain has a full-time 24/7 job to keep you alive. And so it generates these negative emotions in part because anytime it recognizes any threat at all, they're all the same
It's
to your
flight.
brain, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
your brain can't tell the difference between, I don't know, a Mack truck coming right at you, about to run you over, and somebody making a snide remark in a meeting that was a put down to you. Your brain doesn't
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah.
distinguish fundamentally between those. And so its 24/7 job is just keeping you
Yeah.
alive. And so it generates
Yeah.
all of these things. Now, it has this teeny tiny little side hustle, which is helping
Mm.
you thrive, but it's small.
We need to grow
It's
it, I
so
guess.
secondary. It's truly a side hustle. So we work with my clients. We're working very intentionally on how you grow your access to that part of your brain so that you can leverage it more. And we work on that because having that mental command is huge. I also bring my first
Yeah.
coach was a sports psychologist. I
Mm.
learned so much from her, Dr. Roberta Krause, who was at the Center for Creative Leadership. She now heads the Center for Sports Psych in, oh gosh, what is it? Colorado Springs, one of the places where gazillions of Olympians are. And and she has been the sports psych to many
Many
gold,
years.
silver, bronze medal winning
Mm.
Olympians who were not winning until they worked with her. So I learned a great deal from her, and we
Mm.
use a
Mm.
lot of
Mm.
sports psych in our work because when you think about it, if you want to have a successful career, that's about top performance. What does an athlete want?
Yeah. Yeah.
Top performance. It's
Yep.
the same brain.
Podium
You don't have the
finish.
same
Yeah.
body as a world class athlete. I'm sorry to say, but you have the same brain. And so it really, you can leverage a lot of those techniques to
Yeah.
make yourself stronger. I'll share one right now because I'm sure by now people are like, will you please give me a
I'm
concrete
thinking
tip
about
that I
it.
can use right away? Yes. So let me share one from sports side. I think this is so vital. Now, I know this one is so vital, which is about performance. How you view a situation, the exact same situation, has a significant influence over your performance in that situation. So you can either
Hmm,
view the situation as a threat or you can view it as a challenge. And if it feels
hmm,
like a threat, I'll use the example of the snide comment that was a bit of a put down to you. If the first thing you feel is threat, you got to shift that voice to, this is an interesting
really?
challenge. Because do you know what happens when your brain registers threat? I'm
Just
sure you're at
freeze.
the edge of your seat. Cortisol. So, in high performance situations, we have this nice balance between testosterone and cortisol. And yes, to my fellow ladies out there, you have testosterone too, right? So, everybody has testosterone and cortisol. And in high performance, they're in a really nice balance with one another. But when you start to see a situation as a threat, that cortisol shoots up. Cortisol is the threat response. Cortisol makes you back away and start second guessing yourself, second guessing your decisions, second guessing. For a performer, you see them blow something
Mm,
that they did
mm,
masterfully all the time without thinking about it because they're starting to think about it, right? That's what too much
yeah,
cortisol does.
yeah,
What you
yeah,
want to do is get that
yeah.
balance back in place so that the testosterone isn't completely wiped out by the cortisol. And then that way that testosterone can come back into balance and you can step into. That's the hormone that makes you want to step into it and turn on your
Mm,
curiosity
mm.
about, I want to perform well here. I wonder how I could perform well here. It's a challenge. Let me figure it out. Another great example is this is so bad. Rory, I can't remember his last name, for heaven's sake, the top golfer in the world right now.
Rory McIlroy. Yeah. Rory McIlroy.
Yes, yes. He actually catastrophizes in his preparation to play, which is to
Hmm,
say, he imagines the worst thing that could happen and then
okay.
how he would handle that to keep moving
Hmm.
forward. And the worst
It's
thing
interesting.
almost never happens, but
True,
he has
true.
thought through it.
Good for it.
Now, to be super clear, if you're going to do some catastrophizing as scenario planning, you want to do that in advance of the performance, not in the moment when you're
True,
performing.
true. I completely agree. No way you're performing,
Your
no.
brain is going to start trying to do the catastrophizing in the moment when something
Mm,
goes wrong.
mm,
Don't let it. That is just say, hey, brain, this is not the time. It's a challenge, not a threat.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
challenge, a challenge, a challenge.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think this catastrophizing is a fascinating technique because he imagines, it's funny, he
Hmm,
imagines hitting a golf ball into the tree off the first tee. And I had just said to a group of clients last week, which tells you how little I follow golf, this guy is never going to hit a ball in the tree. They said, actually, he did once. Got it.
okay.
So he imagines himself hitting a ball into a tree right up there at that tee. And he imagines it on that exact course at that hole. And then he goes, what would I do? I'm strong enough to climb up into the tree. I would climb up into the tree. I'm good enough with my irons that I can hit it back out and put it back right on the fairway where I want it to be. So
Yeah,
thinking through this catastrophe and then how you would get yourself out of it, I think is a brilliant way to sharpen up your performance muscles under high pressure because there is a tremendous
yeah,
amount of pressure. And the higher you go, there's more. And it just
yeah,
means you
yeah.
need to develop some of these techniques. I'll give you another one if we have a minute,
Yep, yep.
which
I'm
is
taking notes. I'm taking
okay,
notes.
great. Which is interestingly rest cycles. Now the body
Oh,
naturally
yes.
oscillates between what I would call a push state and a rest state. In order to grow, in order to get better at anything, we have to push ourselves beyond our
True,
comfort
true,
or
true.
confidence zone. We have to. So we basically have to put ourselves into stress or we will never get better, right? At whatever we want to get
Mm,
better at.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
The
mm-hmm.
body naturally oscillates though between that stress cycle and a rest cycle. And, two terrific early sports psychologists, Lair and Schwartz, began working with executives after working with athletes for a number of years. And they found the biggest difference is that the athletes were so scheduled, at that level, You're like, this is when you play, this is your performance time. Immediately after, you have your recovery routine. And so it was built into the training because they knew, these athletes were going to trash their bodies if they didn't have the recovery in there. But
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
business,
Yeah.
how it is. You work in a business, you work, or in a public environment, it's not on that rhythm. And so working in scheduled rest times, they don't actually have to be that long. That's the interesting thing. You can oscillate, you can work
Hmm.
through that oscillation without balancing. Balancing is a
Yeah.
ridiculous notion. There is no balance in life. It doesn't work that way. Life is much too dynamic to ever have a
Yeah.
feel of
Yeah.
complete balance. And so after this many years, if there's one bit of advice I would give, it's give up this notion of balance. It's too static, it's more like enjoy riding, surfing the waves. So, when you think about this
True.
oscillation,
True.
surfers surf the wave in and then they get on their board and they paddle back out. And the paddling, I don't know, it's if you've surfed a long
It's not
time, the
easy.
paddling is
Yeah.
not, it's fun. It's not super demanding. And so it's that moment where the brain rests, right? So it can be 10 minutes, it can be several 5-minute breaks, but those need to really truly be breaks
Hmm.
where you are resting in a different way. Now, some people love to
Yeah.
rest with
Yeah.
something like meditation, wonderful, but also consider if you're like me and sitting super still for 10 minutes is not the easiest or most restful thing, can seriously consider your rest break should be using the creative part of your brain or do something physical that your brain interacts with your body differently. So it's either
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
physical or, maybe you played a musical instrument as a kid for a while. Pick up the instrument and play it for 10 minutes. If you're working at home, that'd be a little weird in an open office setting.
Yeah.
Doodle for 10 minutes. If you enjoyed drawing, think back to something you enjoyed as a kid that was creative or physical. Find a version of that you can do in short spurts, maybe 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon.
Yeah.
5, 5,
Yeah.
and 5 spread out throughout the day. It doesn't really, truly doesn't matter what it is. You don't have to be super fussy about what you choose, but choose something that sounds appealing to you, not something that sounds like a stretch goal. Because remember, this is the recovery.
Yeah.
You just
Exactly.
did the
Rest.
stretch. You just did the
Yeah.
stretch,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
recovery, pleasant, enjoyable, and different from the part of your
Yeah.
brain that you use for your work. So I hope that those couple of little tips were helpful and you're going to be able to take those and run with them.
Absolutely. There's a lot I can actually start implementing almost right away now because again, that's why I wanted to have this conversation because I know we can learn so
Dynamite.
much. Again, it's not every day you get a world-class coach to sit in front of you and give you all those tips and those nuggets to help you be better. And who knew we could learn so much from sports,
Thank you.
from sports? Growing up, it was always like, sports, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your life. Go read a book, go do your math. But hey, today I look at sports athletes and I think there's so much you can learn from them, right? Because they are so dedicated. They push themselves, I think, sometimes beyond the limit. I was looking at an article this morning talking about Lindsey Vonn, and I saw the crash she had at the Winter Olympics, and I was like, everyone said she shouldn't do it, she couldn't do it. Yes, she didn't succeed, but she still tried. She still pushed herself. Many of us would not do that, and I think that's a lesson there.
Yes.
Push yourself,
Yes.
because you never know. If you don't push, you don't know what your limit is. You don't know what your boundary is. And then, like you said, you push,
Absolutely.
you come back, rest, research, recharge, and then go back in again.
Yeah.
I think that's been such deep insights into what it is like. And I really appreciate that, Jennifer. Thank you so much for showing us how to eliminate all of those blind spots and lead with authenticity, because I think that is so important. And for everyone who's listening or watching, remember that your journey is not static, and it's a transformation. So not just a job title. You don't become a job title and sit there. If you enjoyed Jennifer's insights today, he has reached over 45,000 readers on LinkedIn already. So make sure to check the show notes down below for her contact info and her website. And speaking of LinkedIn, I'm curious, which of your posts would you say resonated the most with your audience on LinkedIn? If I could put you on the spot and ask that.
Absolutely. And I should say, now that you've mentioned LinkedIn, listeners, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm on almost daily. I try to get out daily when we're doing intensive offsite work. I might disappear for a week or two, but please never hesitate to reach out and contact me on LinkedIn or head to the selbygroup.com website. and fill out the information, just go to info@Selby Group, or just fill out our contact us form. We're a small firm and we pride ourselves on responding to people who have questions for us. So please, please don't ever feel intimidated. Just reach out. And so please do that. And now to answer your question, my runaway hit on LinkedIn was undoubtedly my post, How to Handle an Ineffective Boss.
Ooh, I can see why that was a runaway hit. I can see.
Yes.
I can see why immediately.
Today, that one's a little hard to find on LinkedIn now after this much time, but if you jump over to selbygroup.com and you go to our blog section, just search for Ineffective Boss and it'll pop right up to the top and you'll see it right there.
Okay. That's good. So to make it easy for everyone, I'm going to put a link down, links at the show notes below.
Absolutely.
And first LinkedIn profile, the Selby Group webpage as well. So all of those links are going to be in there. And I will specifically link that Ineffective Boss post as well. So if you want to go straight to that one, you can go there and read all of that and see why it was such a hit. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, you don't miss another episode of the CSM Lounge. If you're on YouTube, like the video. It helps the algorithm. Also, share this with other people who would benefit from this conversation. On behalf of the audience, I want to say thank you so much, Jennifer. It's been such a pleasure having this conversation. You who's listening, go share this with someone who needs to make that change from a techie to a leader, because they need Jennifer's insights to make this work. And I will see you in the next episode. Be true to yourself and stay secure.